Welcome to the Quantum Biology Podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of the emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, Meredith Oak, QBC co-founder and executive coach, with a friendly reminder: podcasts are conversations, not consultations. Though if you're looking for one, check out our practitioner directory, or if you are a practitioner, we have an upcoming certification launching July 17th. All the info is on our website, quantumbiologycollective.com. Have you ever wondered why certain symptoms popped up in your life and at that exact time, why they resolved or didn't? In this episode, we play quantum health detective with wellness practitioner Laura Kissmann as she takes us through her very unique history so we can connect the dots between what was happening with her health and what her living and working conditions were. For example, we find out what happens when you take a young, healthy athlete and put her in an underground bunker filled with radar for 12 hours a day. Enjoy. Hi, Laura. Welcome to the QBC podcast. I'm so excited we finally get to do this.
Thank you, Meredith. Thanks for having me.
All right. So tell us a little bit about what you do right now as a health and wellness practitioner.
I term it, it keeps changing. Quantum Clinician and Educator is what I'm at now. I was calling myself a quantum nutritionist, but I do so much more than nutrition. So I do some energy work. I do something called access consciousness bars, where people come here and I hold these 32 points on their head. I do a lot of coaching online and with people, and that's primarily nutritional, but it's quantum biology health coaching now. And I do some light therapy. I have red light therapy and another light unit. And I teach a lot of workshops. So that's where the Educator is. That's really a big part of what I do. And yeah.
Wow. So you teach workshops in person and you're.
Yes. Yeah. I've taught them I teach them in my community, and I've taught them online as well. The online started through COVID with just having a means to still reach people, which was a blessing in a way. Yeah. It's because I'm starting recording them and then I can share them with more people. And yeah, no, I love them in person though.
Yeah.
That connection.
Wonderful. So you see patients or clients, I should say, from different types of backgrounds, and they come to you for sort of extra healing on top of whatever they're doing with their doctor or with their other care providers. And you provide that extra level of healing, looking at food, looking at emotions, whatever else might be going on with them.
All right. Because you can't, as you well know, you can't do it strictly through the physical. You can't strictly do it through the mental, emotional. You need to pair them all together, because one, sometimes people can't fully get well if they don't address the traumas, the mental, emotional stuff. And at the same time, if they're eating, a poor diet, they're never seeing light. We can't get to the mental, emotional as well. So that's where I can't, part of me says, oh, Laura, I should focus on nutrition, or focus on just quantum biology, coaching on the light circadian stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I can include the other pieces, I can really get them to their optimal health goals, because I've addressed things like the traumas. And now I forgot to mention, but I'm studying, I'm over halfway to be a classical homeopath. And that's when
amazing.
Yeah, really
another modality to layer on.
Yes.
Right. Because that's something that I actually like to clarify a lot, because we have the Applied Quantum Biology certification, from which you are a proud graduate with
very proud
honors. But if we did, you'd have them. And I think sometimes, because it's a certification, people feel like they're coming in to learn a modality or a technique, when really quantum biology is an approach. It's a paradigm. It's a new field of science and a way to look at things. So becoming a homeopath or doing the access bars or doing nutrition, these are all things that are compatible about it, because quantum biology is more like the operating system. It's not the necessarily the actual thing that you're doing with the person.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I listened to a podcast you did with Heather Shepard, And I found it absolutely fascinating. It was another aha moment when she mentioned her theory on her traumatic brain injury and how that shock and trauma of being trapped in a car and head injury itself may have changed the quantum spin, of her own electrons. And so what are you doing with access bars? I know I'm dissipating electrical energy out of their body, and it's incredible the results I've seen with, I had a young girl with anxiety. Her mom didn't tell me till afterwards that she thinks I changed she had OCD. She was leaning to OCD, and this mother said, one treatment, and she said, I don't know what you did, but it stopped after that. And then the mother she came to me and I trained her to be an access bars to actually do it.
Oh, wow.
Continue on and do it on her daughter, which was incredible.
Cool. But, so tell us a little what that is and how it works, access bars.
Oh, okay. This modality is probably 25 years old. It was channeled, which sounds really woohoo. And it's holding these really specific points on the head. A lot of them are around the ear, around the eye and around the ear for a certain amount of time. The first time I do it for an hour and a half. And in one sense, it's like injecting a virus of consciousness into the person. That sounds horrible after what we've been through in a way. But really what it does is it actually, I do all these energy pulls before, so make sure energy is really running through that person and through me. And basically they dissipate electromagnetic energy on different beliefs and thought patterns that just aren't serving them, and comes through my hands and goes actually out my crown chakra is the theory. And I can feel it. But if I just slightly take my hand off, the energy stops. I've been doing it for years now, so I'm really sensitive to the energy. I didn't actually believe, at first I was skeptical of this. I was in the Air Force, right? So black and white, and this was gray. But it just works. And then there's tools that go with it, processing tools. And so I give all my clients this, I call home play. So they get a follow-up email and they have a couple tools each time they come to see me. And that on top of the bars is just brilliant for their growth. And it just brings light and joy to their life. It's magic. I say it's magic, but there is science behind it. They've done thermography. They've done some different looking at the cells, and the shape of the cells actually changes. So there is science behind it.
Right. And of course, now that you understand quantum biology, you can explain like the mechanism behind it. That's what I like. When energy workers come and take the certification, they're like, I always knew everything was energy, but I didn't have the mechanism to explain what was going on.
I also do massage, not as much. I tend to do more of the access bars, and it's you have to look at what are you doing to the water, the fourth phase of water of that person, right? So if
you were going to explain why access bars is so powerful using quantum biology, like what's happening from that perspective when you do those treatments?
Well, I haven't got that far, and I'd love to really sit down with the founders.
Okay. It's energy. Sorry, let me reframe it. I'll ask it the way I asked Heather. Like, what's your sort of theory about what's happening based on what you understand? So I know how absolutely diligent you are, so that you won't pretend to know if you don't absolutely know. So just say like what you think is happening.
so it is a theory, but I think it's similar to what Heather said. I think I'm changing electron spin. And and when we talk through it, so you can be quiet, they can just go into a theta space. It's like they say with access bars, it's at worst it's a relaxing massage, and at best it could change your whole life, is the saying. And so they're very relaxed when you do it. And some people drift off. They can't carry on a conversation. But if we do carry on a conversation, anything that comes up that brings up charge, they release and I release. And it's a beautiful modality to do as a practitioner, because you're light and joyful the whole rest of the day, often into the next day. So
Wow.
I get excited when someone books a bars. I'm like, oh, great. Especially on a Friday.
Hey.
Going into the weekend.
Little electron download.
Electron download, yeah. Maybe lower my electrons. Yeah, exactly. But they say it's coming through my hands and going out through my crown chakra. So, and it's discharging electrons or something to do with the skin.
Yeah.
That's my theory. But I also think there's got to be something with the water, right? That's going to affect the water in the body.
The cellular water. Okay. So let's skip back a little bit. So you are currently an energetic wellness practitioner, shall we say. However, and this is what I find so interesting about you, Laura, you started your career in the Canadian military.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So tell us what you did and what that was like.
Okay.
Because I have to say, if I met someone with the job that you used to have, and then someone was like, you know what, in 15 years, that person is going to be doing energy healing, I would say, no, the type of person in this job is not the type of person that would do that. And yet, here you are. So tell us.
Okay. So I went to military college. And my brothers, I had 3 brothers, very military family. My dad was in the Army. We moved around the world all my life, ended up in boarding school because of that. So 6 years in boarding school in New Brunswick, Canada. Loved it. It wasn't one of those horrible places. Absolutely loved it. And then all my 3 brothers ended up going to military college. And I just thought, that looks like a challenge. It was really an immature decision on my part. I didn't really care what degree I got. I got convinced at the recruiting center that if I'd have a better chance as a woman of getting in if I picked an engineering field. And I thought, okay, I'm good at science, I'm good at arts. So I picked engineering and got in. I was the top student and top athlete. So, I think I had a good chance. I think I had a good chance of getting in. And anyway, so went to RMC. I can fit in sort of, if you're okay with that, I'll fit in the journey that kind of, it's a health journey as well. Okay. So went to military college or went to basic training, had a blast out in British Columbia, fit, really fit outdoors. But then when I got to military college in Kingston, there was an injury right about the 8-10 week mark due to the improper footwear that we had to wear, the girls. And so I ended up getting plantar fasciitis pretty acutely. And so
was that high heels you had to wear?
Yeah, it was a World War II vintage shoe that we wore. And
that was part of the uniform?
It was, and they were just using
oh my God.
Saving money. But my year, actually, there were 18 girls that started. We were the 4th or 5th class of girls at RMC. And after the year, 13 of us finished the year. 11 of the 13 had lower body injuries. And the physiotherapist actually at military college, she treated us all. And she later went on to do a master's and wrote a paper, submitted it. And that's why we have a flat shoe now for women because of our year. But all those other women got better, but I didn't. I carried on with this plantar fasciitis on and off, like quite bad. I had a chiropractor tell me once, you have the worst plantar fasciitis I've ever seen in my career.
Wow.
And that was not so good. Then
what exactly is that? It is like, what does it feel like and look like and do to your body?
Oh, it's like standing on bruises. Like you feel like you're standing on a hard rock with a horrible bruise under your foot. You don't want to stand. You do anything to sit. And walking, you can't walk far. For me, chronically, and I had to give up so many sports. Even like something like cross-country skiing, which is quite gentle. I could only do one every 4 or 5 days. And I actually hit it as best I could in the military because I didn't want to lose my career. So for physical, tests, I would cycle. Cycled was better, and I would kind of just hide it to get through my physical tests. And anyway, so then I had a ski accident, which was my own fault, but it was a traumatic accident. For me personally, it was on my kneecap. I broke my kneecap. And so that took me out for a long time. And it's tough at military college because at that time they called us, if you couldn't do drill, they called you a spaz. So you were on spaz parade. We'd be sitting watching the parades with our crutches and whatever. And so it was traumatic to be sidelined as well, especially when you've been athletic. And so that happened. Then I switched and I went to Royal Roads Military College, which is a most beautiful campus, I would argue, in all of Canada. It's on the ocean. It's in there's a castle with peacocks and deer, and it's beautiful. And
wow, that sounds magical.
It is. Everybody should go and visit Royal Roads Military College. It's open to the public, actually, but it's closed as a military college now. And anyway, I went there, and things got better because I had a surgery, a minor surgery, but I did a lot of physio, and I was outdoors so much. So I'll weave that in hopefully later to explain that piece. Then of course you graduate and pick your field. And I wanted to be an air navigator. But because of my knee, and I had more complications with my knee and my timing of it all, I couldn't do the course. So I ended up in telecommunications. So I was a CLE officer. So I was a communications and electronics engineer. And I studied 2 years of engineering, realized after 2, I'm not cut out to be an engineer. And I switched to physics and physical oceanography, which was really a physics degree, which, by the way, I studied quantum physics, nuclear physics.
Oh, that's why you get everything. Okay.
Well, I do and I don't. It's 35 years old, so it's very rusty, but I think it made me more open. That was the key. And then, of course, we did a little bit of oceanographic biology, if you want to call it that. Very little. It was very much studying waves in physics. I think I'm more courageous to read a Dr. Cruz blog than the average person because he had to learn the physics on his own. So I figure if he can do it, all of us can do it. But so anyway, so from there, I did my training as a communications officer, telecommunications officer, and I overdid it. I'd become a triathlete out on the West Coast. We were the first class of girls, by the way. We were only 4 of us that graduated, so it was a really neat pioneer thing to do, with its challenges, of course. And anyway, when I went on course for this year, I got away from swimming and biking, which were really good for my knee, and I just was running because I was addicted to running. And again, schoolwork every night, sitting. I did a lot of physio. Couldn't heal it. And I got talked into a surgery, which is not done anymore. It realigns the patellar tendon. And that surgery was, again, traumatic. It was a 2-hour surgery. Didn't recover well from it. It never really ran again. It was kind of like a funeral for me in my life because I'd been a big runner. And get posted to my first posting, which I think you know a little bit about, which was North Bay, Ontario, 666 feet underground as a communications officer for NORAD, Canadian NORAD region. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. So this is the piece that just blows my mind, because we talk about, if you're looking at things from the quantum biological perspective, you want to ask everybody, like, what's your environment like during the day? Do you work in an office? Do you get to go outside? And Laura, like, well, I worked for 15 years, 600 feet underground.
No, so only 4 years.
4 years. Okay.
4 years.
You were like down in an underground cave with screens every day, all day. That was. So
the first 2 years I was there, we didn't have computers. Right. So I'm so fortunate to have experienced that. It was such a fun place to work. I was working with all these fighter pilots. And one of the best.
Okay, yeah. Tell what the job is. So what is NORAD? Explain that.
Okay, so NORAD is the North American Aerospace Defense. It's a combined operation between the United States and Canada, and we work together very closely. And we guard the skies all around all of our Canada's north, and all the way down around the States. And yeah, it's a beautiful shared thing that we do as 2 countries. And my job was, if you picture Star Trek, I don't know, it was O'Hara. I was the communications officer. So I was always the one reporting on what the status of the radars and the radios were. So I worked in an operations center, which if you've ever seen NORAD, big screens, it's all dark. And the dark was probably good, but I was in front of screens. And so I had to be there first thing in the morning because we did a morning brief to the two Canadian generals and the American general and all the colonels. And it was a little bit high stress to be such a junior officer and, jumping into this. And so, yeah, but I loved it. I absolutely loved this job. It was physical because it was 3 floors, picture a figure 8. So just to go to the bathroom, you had to go, around the figure 8. You walked and walked and walked, and no computers. So in that era, we walked to people's offices and had a conversation. We didn't send an email, right? And then computers came in my last, I guess, year and a half. And that was interesting because I had my first neck pain and things like body pains you never had before computers. And then another perk I'll just share because it's fun was that because I worked with fighter pilots, they had to stay current on the jet. And I had this boyfriend that worked in a fighter base on one of the operational bases, and he would fly. They would come to me and say, so are you free this weekend? Would it be a good weekend for your boyfriend to come? And later my fiance, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a great weekend. And so he would fly a jet there. We would spend the weekend together, and then they would fly the jet on the weekend and get their hours. And then, and the other perk was that I got some back seats. So I got 2 F-18 rides and 6 T-Bird rides and absolutely.
Oh, that's so fun.
So
How
fun.
Incredible.
And the one was a full 1-hour air-to-air combat mission. And I was an aerobics instructor at the time. Again, it's what I could do with my knee and my feet. And I couldn't overdo it, but I did it. And anyways, super fun. So most exciting hour of my life. So that was that posting.
Okay.
So didn't, struggled with the knee, struggled with the feet. But then my next, and dreamt of a window, right? That was a big joke. Oh, my next posting, I'm going to have a window.
Right, because you're underground.
Underground, right? So we'll hopefully get back to the light piece. But, and of course, a lot of electromagnetic radiation down there with all these massive computers.
So how was it built? Was it like a cave? Or was it?
Yeah, they dug down. There was a north portal and a south portal. You could walk out the south portal. The north portal, we took like a 5-minute bus. It had certain times of day where the bus would go down and up. And and they only dug what they needed to dig. So they only dug a figure 8, in which they put 3 levels. Yeah. So my fighter group was on the 2nd level. Yeah. So we could fire one.
So you're in an underground bunker monitoring
complex
radar.
Yeah, so we've got all.
I can't think of a worse health situation, to be honest.
Well, and on a serious note, like one of the gentlemen I used to sit beside, the aerobics controllers, he died of brain cancer. And then a very good friend of mine who had gone to Royal Roads Military College, a twin no less, died of lymphoma. Wow. At 38, and his brother is who was the fighter pilot, lived above ground. Right. Very interesting. And then of course that also the other guy flew in AWACS with a radar. That big radar, that plane has that big disc radar. So I don't know how healthy that is for the body too. So yeah, so those were wake up calls for me, right? That I was piecing together over the years, and so. Finally get to my next posting, no window. I'm like far away from a big, massive complex. I actually take my retirement. I love the job I did for NORAD, but it was very special. I didn't love telecommunications. Decided I wanted to work on injuries for other people because I had been through a lot of physiotherapy. So retired and took a year of pre-med. Loved that. And then my husband got posted to England on test pilot school, and I finished my school, joined him. And then I forgot to mention that posting in Winnipeg, I was a mess, physical mess. I was, for my first computer job, no window.
Okay.
I've got years.
Computer job in a cubicle, no window, which is the first job you've had after the job in the underground.
So I didn't catch up on light, and I moved to winter peg. So freezing cold winters. We had a record winter cold.
Yeah. So if anyone is not familiar with Canadian geography, Winnipeg is very far north.
Well, I live north of Winnipeg, but it's so cold. It's got this wind that builds up from Vancouver on, I swear. And so didn't get a lot of outdoor time on that. I didn't catch up my light, let's put it that way. Then moved to England, a lot more light, had some great vacations with the Maldives and Turkey, diving, and did some amazing things. Improved. My feet started to see an improvement. Knee started to see an improvement. And then we got posted to Cold Lake, Alberta. So we're talking a lot more northern Alberta. And then I
don't even know where that is. I'm also Canadian. I will add for those listening. So I understand a lot of these places. I don't know Cold Lake, Alberta.
Where are you from, Meredith? Where?
I was born in Ottawa, but I grew up in Toronto from the age of about 9.
Oh, there you go. We have a connection. So then Cold Lake, that's when I got diagnoses. So things were building, I think.
Okay. And what were you doing in Cold Lake, Alberta? Like, what was your day like? Were you working? Were you?
So I was, yes. I had taken some time off. I was in England. And so I was working in the field of telecommunications. I didn't get into physio. Forgot to mention that. Didn't get in first try. We had a little mountaintop discussion in England where we said if we'd try for kids, because I was close to 30, and if it didn't work, then I would try for physio again the next year. Well, I folded his underwear, got pregnant, and so physio didn't happen, and 2 kids later. But after my first child, so I did work. I worked again in telecommunications and probably who knows what, a lot of non-native electromagnetic frequency in that.
In like an office building?
Office building, but it was all the networks and running all the computers and engineering officer. And then first baby, about 11 months in, I'm breastfeeding. I'm so thin. I finally realized we had hosted a christening. I said to my husband, I think I haven't slept for 5 nights. Something's wrong. And he said, Laura, you better get to a doctor. And I had diarrhea. And I was so thin. And I kept just saying, this baby's just sucking the life out of me. I got to stop breastfeeding. And I went to the doctor, and he called and he said, Laura, you better sit down. You're heavy with parasites and you're hyperthyroid. And he painted this picture that thyroid was a better organ. It's better to hit that than say pancreas, diabetes is a better diagnosis. He made me feel better about it.
Yeah.
And so then that was a tough one. That's probably the lowest health time in my life.
So was there a diagnosis? Like, did he?
At that time, I did not have a Graves diagnosis.
Okay.
No, they didn't. They just said hyperthyroid.
Hyperthyroidism. Okay. And your symptoms, you were losing weight. You couldn't sleep.
Yeah, I lost some hair. I was super thin, diarrhea, anxiety, and insomnia. Terrible. And I'm going to go back in time. If I can just take you back to the underground complex, I was having symptoms there, and I started to lose my hair. I had really thick, beautiful, wavy hair, and I was losing my hair at age 22. And they tested me. They tested me for thyroid, right? Didn't know what. Now, flash ahead. Now I get this hyperthyroid. Well, now they're testing me for lupus and other serious conditions, which thank goodness I have. And so I do a whole bunch of alternative stuff, and including, I didn't plan this one. I got pregnant again with my second, which I wasn't ready for. I'll be honest, because I was thinking I just got my sleep back.
Yeah.
But in that journey, that was where alternative medicine played a role. I discovered Reiki and things like that were helping me get to sleep, and so I went into remission, thankfully. Okay. And for 3 years, I felt a lot better. But again, super north, cold winters. And then we moved to Alabama and got into the sunshine, more light. But again, we were all wearing sunglasses and sunscreen, right? Because we were told, now you're really south. This is dangerous sun compared to.
Be careful.
Be careful, right? And then And I was good until just as we were moving to a fighter base, my husband was going to be commanding officer. I was a little stressed because it was a French base and it was a French squadron, and my French wasn't fully bilingual. I was functional. So that was playing a role, but I also had amalgams out, early days of that. So I don't know if that triggered something, but a couple health scares. I had a lump in my breast, and I became hyperthyroid this time. Then they did a lot. It came back. And now in Quebec, they did all this testing, and I'm stressed because I can't ask every question to these doctors because it's my second language. And I finally just said, do the radioactive iodine treatment. Let's do the fix. Let's get this done and over with, and I'll get on with my life. Little did I know that all it did was give me another diagnosis of hypothyroidism. And now I'm on medication for life. And I'm still testing that all the time, but that theory, and I never give up hope. So that was that. And then, but the physical stuff, the physical injuries improved because now I'm on a base where I walk everywhere. Everything's a short distance. I'm not driving. I'm outdoors a lot. I'm getting more light. I could see that with my young kids, and I had dogs. And so I was just getting more light. And so it's funny how the physical, like my knee and my feet, would get a little bit better as I would get more light. But that was something I pieced together. Then we get posted back to Cold Lake, and then eventually to Ottawa. And so few more things though with that. So now I'm okay. So then I work part-time. I work for wing operations by the tower, which the perk was all the all the retirements when the fight got, or if they got upgraded and flew 2,000 hours, we'd get a message, hey, head up on the roofs, because we get to see all the jets, do the flybys by the tower. And it was a great, really fun posting. And then, so then we ended up coming to Ottawa. And in this time, I didn't mention, I took massage therapy because I really had this passion for the body and learning. I couldn't do physio, I couldn't get physically close enough to a school. So I took massage over, 2-year format. Like 1 year, 7 years later, took the second. And my body was broken at the end of both of those courses. And I realized I can't do this for a living. I'm going to have to go back to the Air Force, which financially was probably a good decision. But I went back full time to the Air Force. Then I found out at the end of that posting that there was a radar about 1 kilometer away, just going around and around. And I got a letter saying the building we were in had toxic mold, which is, very interesting.
Wow. Okay.
And along this journey, I've developed chemical sensitivities to perfumes was the biggest one, and smoke. And then my last Air Force job was really cool. It was foreign liaison, where I worked at our headquarters, and I worked with all the military attaches. So they're people they're like colonels that have been assigned from, I had a lot of African countries. So I had, very Northern Africa.
Cool. Oh, fun.
Very cool job.
Like a diplomatic job.
Diplomatic, but the downside was we would organize visits. A lot of detailed event planning was really what it was. And we would put on these like 5-day visits I would get a school from the Mexican Navy, or I would get the chief of the Swedish Air Force, or the head of the Minister of National Defense from Israel, like really, really high level. Everything had to be perfect. Wore a BlackBerry on my hip, for 5 days straight on vibration mode, because you could never have a phone ring. Everything had to be seamless. Right. During these visits. And I developed phantom ringing, which is, I don't know if you know what that is, but after the visits would end, it would be 2 weeks later, I'd have no cell phone on my body, and I could feel the exact timing and the vibration of it. And it's a real thing. It's called phantom ringing. So then I thought, there's something here. And the other thing I noticed was the fluorescent lights. I couldn't handle them. They were just something wrong. And one of my coworkers ended up eventually getting chronic fatigue syndrome. I found that very interesting that she did that. So, and then in all of this, I tried health, and I tried to do all these healthy things, right? And I did pretty much everything through diet. So I I started off with cutting out sugar. Then it became, really clean eating. And we were learning about all these toxins in food. Then it became I went down a really strong journey on the alkaline diet for about 7 years. Became very thin by the end of that.
What's involved in the alkaline diet? What does that look like?
So no meat, not really any fish. You could do a little bit of fish. I was really strict. A lot of nuts, oils, a lot of the seed oils, and olive oil, big part of it, avocados, vegetables, the primary. It's all about vegetables and greens. Greens, lots of greens.
It's super plant-based, very light on the protein.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to pause for a moment because I really want to make sure that the audience, especially someone who's a little bit new to what we're talking about, is understanding why we're going into such detail on Laura's work history, right? Because from a quantum biologic perspective, like when we think about how the body works through that lens, the environment that we put our body in and the type of exposure that our body receives in that environment is the absolute most critical thing. So for anyone listening, what we're doing is we're tracing Laura's symptoms and tying them into the environment that her body was in when those symptoms showed up. And I love you as a case study because, I mean, if anyone's listened this far, they obviously know you are an extremely diligent person. Mm-hmm. Right. So when you say you did the alkaline diet, you did the alkaline diet. And I know that about you. And so, and if you say that
and then I did the medical medium diet.
Healed them. Oh, okay. Okay. So if you say you used food to heal, I know because of how you are that you took it and did it as thoroughly as it is possible to do. Right. And the healing results were not there.
No. And in fact, they created some new ones.
Okay. Yeah. And in fact, created some new ones.
Yes. So one being bladder.
Because you hadn't yet tied your symptoms into your environment. And you have such an incredible, your work history is just so interesting to me, especially starting off at the underground bunker and going through and being exposed to such extreme frequencies in all of your jobs. So I really wanted to highlight that for anyone listening, because there is a reason we are going through all of this. And hopefully it inspires people listening to do the same thing, right? It's like, what was I doing all day when that pain started? What was happening? Where was I working when this thing started? And then I meant to do something that was supposed to help me get better, like this highly restrictive diet, and things got worse, but my environment stayed the same. So these are all the types of clues that we're picking up. And Laura, your case is just so instructive.
I'll try and sum it up. First of all, the quote, I got this quote off of this podcast with Dr. G, who was on one of my courses. Every disease is a result of a mismatch between your environment and your biology. And that is truly what happened in my case. So It started with the lack of natural light underground, 4 years, and being this diligent person. I don't read as fast as other people. It takes me a little longer. So I would use my lunch breaks to finish up my work or stay later. So picture going in before sunrise, briefing the generals. Other people would go up and play tennis. They'd walk out the south portal. I didn't do that. I stayed down there, or I taught aerobics to a class down, I wouldn't. And in winter, I didn't come up till 6. I never saw any natural light. So that was breaking one of Mother Nature's laws, right? And then the toxic blue light, obviously screens eventually, but probably the light was probably fluorescent lighting the whole time, right? All day long. And then flash ahead, I couldn't tolerate that fluorescent lighting at the end of my career, which is interesting. I became a night owl. I'm just typically a night owl because it's this quiet time. I can diligently do my little work. And then the anesthesia, that 2 hours, I now know through quantum biology that destroys the collagen and dehydrates the collagen. So that could have triggered the hair loss and all these things. And then big EMF environments, obviously underground, but the BlackBerry on the hip, the radar station, fighter bases, all those radars are always was around me, right? And then I was a chronic snacker. So I was probably leptin resistant and I ate late. And that actually started military college. They fed us peanut butter and sandwiches at 10 o'clock at night called Kai every night. That started that habit. So anyway, all that circadian mismatch, mitochondrial, we call it mitochondrial dysfunction. So those little guys, those little organelles, I was damaging those. My gut clocks were off. So I eventually started having leaky gut syndrome, then the parasites, right? That led to that. Hormone dysregulation. There was my thyroid. For me, it presented as thyroid as opposed to some people get it as adrenal fatigue. The mood, I would say the mood, if it was a mood issue, it was anxiety. I hid anxiety, I think, at work. Disrupted sleep, that was the insomnia. And then the EMF and chemical sensitivities came out of that. And then my eyes were getting worse. And I forgot to mention that I wore contacts. I couldn't wear them at work because probably all those electromagnetic frequencies and toxic light, it was too dry. I had dry eyes, which was a symptom I didn't realize. And then as soon as I left work, contacts in. So my eyes never saw natural light. Never. Wow. Right? For many, many years. And I did have LASIK, which is another problem because there's gravitational lensing issues with that. Anyway, and then of course the joint, the tendons, the muscles, and then eventually got a low bone density diagnosis at a young age, in my mid-30s, which was really disturbing to me because I drank my milk every meal, and I see that now as quantum dehydration.
Right.
So, and the aha moment came when I took the first level of the Applied Quantum Biology Foundations course, when you put a slide up and it was an equation and it was healthy light plus, I make sure I'm going to get it right here.
Yeah, I think, increase healthy light
and decrease toxic light, which is both blue light and electromagnetic frequencies like our cell phones and Wi-Fi and all that will equal optimal health. And I use that slide in all my workshops now, and I teach it to all my clients because it's so simple. It comes right down and it ties back to every disease is a result of a mismatch, right?
Okay. I'm glad you said that. I was thinking of getting rid of that slide. I'll keep it.
No, it's so, I use it and I've got it. Yeah, no, I love that.
Okay.
Slide. Yeah.
And I think what also, that slide brings up an important topic, right? Is that when you say to somebody like, oh, it turns out margarine is bad for you, right? They can mentally take it out of the health food column and put it into the junk food column. But when we talk about light, there aren't even columns, right? There's not even a paradigm of toxic light. We just think like, if it's bright, I can see. If it's dark, I can't see. Right. So I think, just raising that is really
healthy.
important.
Light is your window open at least, or outside, Yeah. So
break that down. So healthy light is.
So there's good light and bad light. And actually I in my workshops, I stole a slide from John. I give him credit, but he so simply, John Warner, he's on our course. He so simply said good light and bad light. And then he actually made a little category for less good light, which is some man-made, to say, okay, halogens are better than LEDs, for example, right? That LEDs are definitely in the bad light. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah. So quantum biology explains circadian biology. And we recently discovered that circadian rhythm controls every process in the body, and circadian rhythm is controlled by natural light. So you were effectively cut off from the main programmer of your body's systems for years.
Now, on the good side, I did skin and gain. I've always loved the sun. I've always loved that. It was the era of suntan.
Right. And back to noticing the effect of the environment. When you were on vacation, your symptoms were reduced. You felt better.
Yes. And summers, I think I felt better in North Bay. that underground posting, because I would spend weekends. I had a dock. I was living in a rundown cottage, but I was driven to the sun. I can remember one time, a highlight in my life. It was April, and I thought this memory came up last night thinking about this podcast. It was an unusual day. It was like 20 degrees in April. The lake was still frozen that I lived on. And I headed out on my cross-country skis, and I turned around, came back in, put my bathing suit on with my sunglasses, of course, went out, and I skied for like an hour with my bathing suit on. Didn't care if who saw me. In winter.
Or early spring, which is winter.
Early spring. And I remember that being obviously I know it's an opiate, the sun, but I was probably so starved of vitamin D that that was my body that took me back to the house, put the bathing suit on, said, I don't care who sees you doing this, but you're going to get this.
You just had like an intuition. You're like, I need every part of my body as much as possible out in this light, not even knowing why.
And that time I had no suntan lotion because I was April, but I'm still in that era. We were the copper tone, the oil. It was these thick oils that smelled really nice and smelled like coconuts. And we would lather our bodies with a SPF 4 or an SPF of 8. So I still got some light, but I don't know how much through the skin.
All right. So, okay. So let's get up to present. And then I'd love for you to share your take on explaining this to a newcomer. Okay. So we did, in an effort to heal the symptoms that we now understand were caused by your environment, you did what we all do, which is to change your diet in a very intense way. So kudos to you. I found this because I can't be this intense about food. There must be something else I can do. And it turns out that something else was not to read iPad on factory settings with my naked eyes before bed. Who knew? And then I'd be like, why? My chronic fatigue's getting worse. It was getting better, and now it's getting worse. Because I would, when we don't know, we don't know. We just sort of make a change, and then all of a sudden everything gets worse and we don't understand why. That's what I love this information, because it does fill in so many of those mysteries that we can't figure out about our health. Okay. So the alkaline diet, the medical medium diet, then what happened?
Okay. So the alkaline diet, I learned a lot about electromagnetic frequencies and radiation. I became an instructor after I took, I forgot to mention, I took natural nutrition, holistic nutrition. That really enjoyed that. Yeah, found my tribe there. And I was working as I was instructing towards the end, and I realized, as I was watching, they weren't mentioning it at all, electromagnetic frequencies, and So I built a workshop. Whenever I get curious about something, and I'm intensely curious, I build a workshop. So that's why I have so many workshops on so many stuff. It's where I put the information, and then I can teach this. And then in teaching, you learn, right? Yeah. So I started teaching these workshops on electro, and it came from that phantom ringing, right? The fluorescent lights, and wondering about, is there a danger to all this? And and then somewhere in there, I heard the Ben Greenfield, I think it was that podcast with Dr. Jack Cruz, and heard truth, right? Just heard truth. And I signed up to his blog, and
heard Dr. Jack Cruz on Ben Greenfield's podcast, and he was talking about health from a completely different perspective. What did he say where you went, oh my God?
Well, I think it might have been the electromagnetic frequencies, and worried about this upcoming it might have been 5G. I mean, I've listened to so many of his podcasts. Yeah, I'm a huge follower of his, and my diligence, right? I'll just find every and I'll write notes. Like, I literally transcribe what he says, and then I process it, and it goes parts or quotes in workshops. And it can be my dream for him to see one of my workshops one day, to see how many slides he's in, and how many pictures of him I have, and how many of his memes. He makes my workshops, I swear.
Yes, no, Dr. Cruz's work is hugely influential and opened so many of our eyes to how our bodies really work, that I don't think we would know about for decades. if it wasn't for him. Yeah.
And then,
Thanks, Jack.
thanks. Thank you, Uncle Jack. And then, but I wasn't, honestly, the blue blocker thing, I was starting to get the light. So I'd ordered the big ones that went around, big, ugly for $5 or whatever glasses. I was starting to see the light picture, but then I
listen to Dr. Cruz and you're like, oh, it's not just about the food. I also have to
I was learning
take care of my light and my electromagnetic frequency environment.
Yeah. So I really had
your two key takeaways.
Yeah, I really got the electromagnetic piece. And in fact, I've now built a series. I just finished this year, like in 4 parts of EMF basics. What are the risks? How to mitigate? I now test homes. I've really taken that piece. And then I tried very hard to build one called Building Resiliency to Electromagnetic Frequencies, which is a lot of this, right? Yeah. But I struggled with the workshop because I'm not so sure with today's frequencies what we can actually build resilience. I really I'm going to ask him if I ever get a chance to say, is that an oxymoron? Should I just, take that workshop and throw it out? But anyway, so then it was on a Friday and I can't remember how I saw this message about the course that you've started. And I got so excited and I didn't know how much of this thing was going to cost. And I went, no, I have to contact her. And so we had our little 15-minute consultation. And I just, that night I was on the course. I didn't even know it started that night. And I just made, like after day 1, I think it was week 1, maybe day 1, that was it. That was the change that I needed because I just made a commitment to myself that I'm getting shivers here. That I wouldn't miss another sunrise. I never got that picture after hearing Jack talk about, be like the Sphinx and all of that, right? So that finally started that journey and love the course. Sat in on it twice. I think I'm there for every live that I can make. And have just learned so much from the instructors and from the course mates as well. And now you've inspired me to capture studies. That's been another journey, which has been really good. Capturing the studies and then level 2 is another whole, oh my goodness, that was something else too. So I feel so privileged to have learned all that. Yeah. And now teach it to other people.
Yes. And now you are teaching it in your own right. So give us a little teaser. Like we'll keep it high level for a general audience, but walk us through some of what you now teach.
Okay, so it came out of COVID. We were all kind of shut, locked in our homes and stuff. And I kind of lost my zest for my holistic nutrition with that experience for a number of reasons, but I won't get into that. And I, could have been because it was missing the quantum biology piece. And when I learned it, it was like, oh my God, the world needs to know this piece because we're trying so hard with our food, and our exercise, and our stress levels and our modality, like our energy modalities, to get this like massaging and to try and get, the trauma work and all of this. But it's missing the fundamental where we truly should start. And I, of course, heard that message from Dr. Jack Cruz for years, but it just, and some through the alkaline diet, I have to say, to give it a lot of credit. And so, yeah, well, and then I lost the question. Just where I'm now. And so, yeah, so I think it was 2022. I just made I said, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to build a series. It started off with just one because it was our course assignment. And I did, it was Quantum Biology 101. And then I went, well, there's so much more. I haven't told them anything about sunlight or anything about blue light. So then the next one became Sunlight. I call it Sunlight Protocol, very much based on Heather Shepard's Sunlight RX.
Okay, great. Give us a little sunlight. Walk us through some key things we should know about sunlight. So we're for an audience member who's just been through this whole journey and they're like, why does she care so much about where her office is? And why does she care so much about not going outside? Tell us why you care so much.
So much. Because in one sentence, we are batteries made of water charged by sunlight. It's that simple. If you're not getting out in natural light, you're not charging the battery. And it's going to slowly, you're going to slowly get the symptoms. So if you have a light deficiency, that is mal-illumination. It's a deficiency. Yeah, and you're going to get malfunction. If that's another simple way to talk about it. So I break it all down, the 4-step chronological order: getting the sunrise, then working into UVA, UVB, which we're all terrified of, getting our UV light, and yet it does these fundamental things through these aromatic amino acids in the eyes to make our hormones, make our neurotransmitters, program our sleep for that night. And so had I known this, I would have been out, if I could have got some UV light, back in the day when I had debilitating insomnia, I could have cured it had I known what I know now, of course, right? So, so think of that's, anyway, I build it, and then I really get into sunscreens, the sun blockers, right? All those nuances of what to do about sunscreen, like sunglasses, sunscreens, skin cancer, show a lot of studies, so it's fills in those holes.
So we're batteries. We are charged by sunlight. Every phase of the light throughout the day
is important. Yeah, it does a different role.
Important and plays a different role in our overall health. And so when we block the sun by being inside, by being underground, by wearing sunscreen, by wearing sunglasses, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing to our health when we block that light?
So I guess I should bring it back to the mitochondria. These are these little organelles in all of our cells. And they're sensors. They're environmental sensors. They sense everything. They sense temperature through the air we breathe. But the light, fundamentally through our skin and through our eyes, they find out where Laura is in time and space. So she's at the 45th latitude on June 13th. And so without getting that signal from the light through the eye, it's a non-visual, it's not take away vision. There's a non-visual pathway, and it goes up into our brain to this wonderful time crystal in our brain called the SCN, suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it's our master clock, and it has to run faster than the rest of the body, just like the GPS in the sky has to be 0.38 seconds faster than all of our cell phones. Or we might try and drive from Ottawa to Toronto and end up in Barrie, north of Toronto, because if you don't have all those clocks, the master clock running faster than all these we have clock genes all through our body. This is all very new, probably in the last 10 years of research. Mm-hmm. And so it's so much about timing. And if you're timing, it's chronobiology. The saying is timing is everything. So you have to really work on that timing. And it's all tied in with the eye, the pathway to this master clock, and then to all these clock genes and to the mitochondria. And everything has to work in sync. And sum it up, you want to be synced with the sun. If you're not synced with the sun, it's going to lead to dis-ease in the body.
Perfect summary. We need to be synced with the sun. If we're not synced up with the sun, we will pay the price.
Yeah. And you could get into more details, like, getting the sunlight in the UVA light, let's say, that 8 to 10 a.m.-ish light produces this hormone serotonin that eventually gets translated into melatonin. That's our serotonin we think of as our happy neurotransmitter. And it goes to melatonin, which is actually the guardian angel of all of our mitochondria. So again, it all goes back to, protecting those beautiful mitochondria. And that's like the ultimate self-care, is loving on your mitochondria and syncing up with the sun. So then you asked me about the other workshops. So the next one I call it the blue light protocol. Very based off what I learned from our CEO of Viva Rays, Rudy Nassif. And so very much I tell his journey, because I think his health journey is another great case study.
Right.
And
yes. Just a little insert. We have a podcast with him back towards the beginning, around episode 2 or 4 or something.
Listen to that. It's so good. Oh, his son, he's so wonderful. And he's the first Canadian. You're the first Canadian pioneer, quantum biology pioneer. I guess he's the second, and maybe I'm the third, somewhere there. Who knows? But so yeah, tell that whole blue light story, and not so much the electromagnetic frequencies. I really focus on the light and getting your lighting better, and giving people technologies. Funny enough, the hacks to help. Okay, if you're going to have to be on a computer screen at night, how can you do that the safest way?
Right.
Without throwing off.
That's the flip side of the sun being our source of health, is that artificial light at night. So we're cut off from the sun, we're going to get sick. But even if we're getting sun, if we're also getting bright artificial light at night, we're still throwing all those clocks you just beautifully described into total chaos.
And the mitochondria think it's solar noon. If you've got a light above your head and then the blue from the screen. So that's a complete circadian mismatch that causes chaos from a physics perspective, which from a medical perspective will turn into inflammation. And that can present in many different forms. It can present as thyroid disease. It could present as plantar fasciitis, or in other cases, it could be weight. I think a lot of people don't understand, and diabetes. We actually know there's a clear. You can become diabetic from blue light. And that was a big wake-up call for me.
Wow. Could you quickly explain how that could happen? Because I know when I first heard that blue light at night was the same thing as like drinking a Coca-Cola or eating an ice cream sundae.
I wish I had the slide. I have the slide. I'm going to refresh on it, but I have a beautiful slide it's from Dr. Cruz, I think. And it shows the light bulb, a big bright light. And at the end, you've got this person, I think, that's got diabetes at the end. But I can't off the top of my head right now. I'm freezing on it. It affects the blood sugar. It does affect the blood sugar through cortisol. It's definitely through a cortisol link. And then that elevated cortisol, eventually, it's funny enough, getting that wrong light at the wrong time is, throwing off all of those, the clocks, and probably in the end, it's throwing off the clock in the pancreas fundamentally. So, and so that master clock, that pancreas clock is running faster than the master clock once you throw that rhythm off. So to get that back, just change your light. Sure, it would be great to go low carb, right? Maybe a low carb diet and cut the breads and sugars, obviously, but it would probably happen faster. But what if you just changed all your lighting? You might prevent prediabetes. If you're diabetic, you may, I think you have to do probably some stronger things and things in combination. But so there's that. Then I do the next workshop is quantum sleep. So I just went down a rabbit hole on sleep and ended up with a full workshop. So, and I think sleep is so important because those mitochondria, the timing through our circadian biology are meant to go into this regeneration phase in the middle of the night. And so they do this, they do like this dishwasher cleaning, let's call it, and maybe changing the engine oil. And we've got these fancy terms for those, autophagy and apoptosis, not to be considered lightly because they really need to happen. Because if they're not happening, your mitochondria are not healthy. And if apoptosis, the cell replacement is not happening, that can lead to cancer. So now I have clients coming to me, with cancer diagnoses, and I'm working on all these things, right? They need these. That's why I just appeal to people to get a quantum biology coach, no matter where you find one, because it is a miss. It could be a missing piece. I think it is a missing piece. And I think it plays a huge role in prevention of it coming back and hopefully preventing. Well, no, addressing the quantum biology.
Yes.
And of course, getting
quality sleep. Yeah, is the
quality sleep.
It's sort of like the one of the key outcomes of having a circadian regulated life is that you get the kind of sleep that heals and restores.
You start to sleep like a baby again. You really do.
It's so interesting. Like everyone, I talked to these podcasts on different topics, right? And it's like, oh, it turns out that every single mental illness is tied back to sleep disruption. Oh, and Dr. Michael Twyman is saying like the absolute best, most key thing to do to prevent a heart attack is to get good quality sleep. Right. And that now you're saying to prevent cancer, get good quality sleep. Like we just in the way that we massively underestimate what light is doing to us, we massively underestimate why we need to sleep.
And I'll bring it back.
A little bit glamorize people who are able to like, I grew up with a father who's always like, I don't know what everyone's talking about. I only need 5 hours. And like, okay, right. And so that idea,
you can function. Some people function.
Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Like we'll just keep going and going and going. But
the timing of your sleep was important too. A lot of people are staying up, they're night owls like I was. Mm-hmm. I've had a transition through this course, and it's getting that the earlier you get to sleep, those processes, there's a certain timing for these processes. And if you've blown it, you're blowing it, right? You need to actually.
So I'm just, thinking of people who are listening to this, they're like, I can't do that, or my job's like this. And it's like, you could just sort of do what you can, right? Like if you work in an office with no windows, then you can just go outside and get a little bit of sun. So if you're someone who likes to stay up late, let's say you were going to pick 3 nights a week to get like a perfect circadian sleep. What time should we stop eating? What time should we go to bed? And when should we wake up?
Oh, okay. Well, wake up with the sunrise, right?
All right.
Right. And then go to bed, aim for 9. I think 9 o'clock. And by the time you get all your processes done, my husband says I have a lot of processes. It might be 10 o'clock, but I think everything, it's relative. It changes with the year, so living in Cold Lake, it was bright until 11:30 at night. So we didn't feel like we wanted to sleep. Now, I think there is a place to say that we don't need maybe as much sleep in the summer as we do in the winter. We kind of go into this hibernation, mode.
Right.
So there is some playroom there with the timings. Yeah, I would say that I'd like to see people asleep at 10 o'clock at night if I could. Yeah. And
okay, so just generally, I'm listening to this. I'm like, I don't know what these ladies are yammering on about, but okay, I'm going to devote a couple nights a week to make sure I have circadian optimized cycle. So I'm going to go to bed in a dark room by 10 o'clock. And when I wake up, I'm going to go right outside. Ideally, sunrise. Sleep mask might be helpful, right? Because our body is going through all of these certain processes, which we evolved doing. And it's only in the last 30 seconds we've thrown all these stressors at our body, light at night and brightness and all these different things. And our bodies are unable to cope with it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just bringing it back to sunrise, if you're stressing about, I'm not tired by 10, start doing sunrises. And especially this for where I live, this is the hardest month of the year. I did a leptin reset with Sarah Kleiner, another graduate, and it was tough. It's 5:15, and so I was struggling in June this time last year when I did a leptin reset with her. But when you do that, guess what? You're going to be tired you're programming your sleep. The minute you see that morning light, there's a signal through the blue light that you see in that morning light that goes up to that time, that clock in the brain, to say, okay, 12 hours from now, that's when the melatonin is going to release. And so then you start to play with blocking the blue light to make sure that melatonin, dim the lights or blue blockers or whatever you do, get off screens. And And then there's
good night's sleep starts first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it does. That's a great way to sum that up. It absolutely does. And then the last workshop is is the one I put off forever, being a nutritionist for so many years. I'm actually coming up to my 10th anniversary the next year. So I've been focusing so much on food. I didn't want to do quantum nutrition. I think you might remember during the course, I was asking everybody, what do you guys eat for breakfast? Because I'm like the plant-based person. And so I had a long journey. It took me a year, but it was so worth it to do that workshop, because it made me go down different rabbit holes of deuterium and glyphosate and what do they do to the mitochondria, and the seasonal eating and the local eating, and plant-based versus, just going through a lot of those questions I had in my mind.
So what are the key changes that you made from, say, the alkaline type diet, which was heavily plant-based? What do you eat, generally speaking, now? And how do you make those decisions, just generally?
Okay. Well, one thing I'll say that came out of the alkaline diet was I had bladder, and the medical medium diet, I would say. Medical medium is a lot of fruit.
For people who don't know, the medical medium diet, that's the one where you drink a lot of celery juice?
Yes, celery juice. I did a ton of, I coached people on liver cleanses where you're doing these spinach soups and a lot of fruit, like a lot of tropical fruit.
Okay.
But I'm not saying that these things don't work. I think they could work if you live in the right environment for them. But in Canada, where I live at the 45th latitude, those things don't grow here ever. And so the electromagnetic light code that's in those fruits, let's say, and I'm doing this liver cleanse, let's say in November, which I did, and wondering why I'm so bloated. I can barely, get to the bathroom in time. I'm having these terrible, problems with my bladder. So that was one of my drivers to go, there's got to be another way here. So now how I eat, I call it the quantum sunlight diet. I got it down to 3 words, or quantum nutrition, or the sunlight diet. Heather Shepherd has coined a name. So I think she calls it the sunlight diet. And really it's a number of things, but it's fundamentally based. You should be eating foods that are grown, that there's that's matching your biology to the environment. So the light code that's in the foods is your own mitochondria down when you get to the tiny quantum, which means electron, proton, the tiny quantum means tiny packet, at that atomic, subatomic level, that they'll actually read. It's like a barcode reader, and it can read the barcode. But when you put the barcode from somewhere down in Costa Rica, let's say, the banana that comes from Dole in Costa Rica, it just doesn't compute. And then that's causing the whole chaos in terms of physics turns into inflammation.
Right. And back to what we were discussing earlier, where it all really depends on your environment. So someone might have a diet that works beautifully with a client who lives in Florida, but they try that with a client who lives in North Dakota, and the results are totally different because our environment affects.
Yeah, and I know people that eat the alkaline diet down in the Caribbean. I have a colleague, and she's thriving with a pretty strong diagnosis. She's overcome incredible hurdles with her health.
But she's living at the equator with a stable light environment.
Yes.
So she can exist on this largely plant-based.
Yes.
Yeah, and she can do okay.
And thriving.
So just quickly, meat and fish, just to round out.
Yes, lots of meat and fish.
Lots of meat and fish.
Yeah, okay.
And mostly vegetarian. That's not happening. I know how much breakfast research you did. What is your favorite breakfast right now?
You know what? I learned it from Sarah. I do her sausage casserole. But I play with it. I change it up. It's all different flavors.
Tell us what that is. I'm unfamiliar with Sarah's Kleiner's sausage casserole.
So you cook up a bunch of sausages.
Yeah.
You put them in a food processor so that it's like mincemeat.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you put it. It's so simple. You just oil a Pyrex. Mm-hmm. Put it in. Take about between 12 and 18 eggs. Mix them all up. Pour it over. Cook it in the oven for 35 to 45 minutes, and you're set.
Oh, that sounds great. I struggle getting my children to eat enough protein in the morning. I'm going to try the sausage casserole.
Oh, and then she just keeps it in the fridge.
Yeah, and you can just cut a little square and heat it up.
Exactly.
I got a puppy to take on more light, and it works. So my morning, instead of being outside for like 10 minutes in the morning, I'm now outside for 45, and it's changed. I mean, I thought my sleep was good. I thought my energy was good, because compared to where it was in previous years, it is, but wow.
So I've taken
anything anyone can do. Like if you have a dog, you are on the quantum superhighway. Like that is a huge,
I love
and
that.
if they need to go, do the walk in the morning, right? If it's a dog, he'll just go in the backyard and pee and come back in the house. Like schedule the morning walk. It has been a game changer for me. And I thought I was already doing pretty well in my circadian optimization, but yeah, huge difference. All right, Laura. So any sort of final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us from your incredible journey through all of these different environments and all of this different learning?
I will just say, I use this as a slide to sum up my Quantum Biology 101 class, which I taught the seniors, by the way, and they just get it, right? Because they used to live. It's so neat to see. They just get it.
I noticed that people who were born like in the 40s and 50s, they didn't grow up with this demonizing of the sun. And so you say like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I spent my whole childhood outside. And
they're the first to point out like the addiction to the cell phones.
Yes.
Really interesting. I would just say the slide that I have, there's that half truth, let food be thy medicine. I think in my journey, I thought that for so long. And I think it's a half truth. I think food is important. Yes. And it
so the idea, let food be thy medicine, end of story.
Yeah.
is only half the truth.
Half the truth. And I would I'll give you a couple iterations. I'd like to see it move towards let light, water, and magnetism be thy medicine, and thy medicine be light, water, and magnetism. Or if we just want to make it simple, let quantum biology be thy medicine, and thy medicine be quantum biology.
Lovely. I love that. Yes. And if anyone wants to learn more, if they're in the Ottawa area, they can go to one of Laura's workshops, or they can look you up online. Where do we find you, Laura?
So my website is Laura Kissmann Wellness. Kissmann has 2 S's and 2 N's.com. And I'm on Facebook, but the quantum stuff, I just love Instagram. I find it sums me up. I can only write so much. Yeah. And it's always this kind of a picture. I like that idea. And so I'm at LK Wellness that's my handle. I'm on Twitter, but Instagram is my main.
So LK Wellness on the socials, especially Facebook, and Laura Kissmann, 2 S's, 2 N's, wellness.com. All right. Thank you, Laura.
And I just want to sum up in terms of gratitude is to thank you, Meredith, and I'll try not to cry, but thank you for the opportunity. And you've changed my health trajectory through this. And with that experience and knowledge, I'm now changing the health trajectory of others. And there's no better job in the world.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
You're so welcome. You deserve it, Meredith. Keep on your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.